What's going on? Hey, welcome to Academy 99 podcast. I'm Bradley Grinnen. This is Chris Lee, and this is episode 4. What's going on, brother?
How you doing, man? Doing great.
Sweet. It's occurred to me as I've looked at the final product of our podcast. I got to figure out a way to move my camera over here because it looks like we're both just looking off the same direction.
Yeah, I'm trying to adjust it so I'm looking more closer to the camera, but maybe that helped a little bit.
Yeah, who cares?
Yeah,
I honestly don't. Yeah. So
I'm already experiencing internet issues.
Oh, did I freeze again? I freeze up a lot. I've got performance anxiety.
I think it's just when we start recording because, like, before we start, it was fine.
Could be.
Whatever. Maybe.
You know, a great way to reframe that, Chris, is, technology likes me so much it gets overheated when I'm around. All about the reframe. Something we were just talking about.
Yeah.
There's like 99 ways to skin a cat. Who skins cats, by the way? Never mind. I don't even want to go into it. There's more than one way to skin a cat is the cliche, and it's accurate and true. We talked in our last episode about like there are 50 shades of right.
Yeah.
The right way, right?
Sure. With
total subliminal subtext there. But there's all kinds of different ways to do it right. And what paralyzes people is, I gotta do it right, which then oftentimes is used as an excuse. Elite performers, people in that 99th percentile, they're operating differently, but they still make excuses. And I find usually our excuses, when we first start making excuses, it's a blind spot. And then with enough self-awareness or with the right people around you, it gets pointed out pretty quickly. And then you've got to make a decision. Am I going to make excuses or not?
Right.
But oftentimes when you and I don't know how many different books, podcasts, videos have you consumed of people in the 99th percentile, sharing from their heart, hopefully information that's beneficial. How many times have you consumed that and then just thought like, okay, I guess that's the only way. It's got to be done this way until you find somebody else who shares something else.
Right.
That's completely different, but still, a completely different path up the mountain. I don't hear many people talk about how there's options, because if you ask me, how do I climb this mountain or how do I solve this problem? I'm going to give you the way that I know worked best for me and works best for people I work with.
Right.
Most of the time.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say it with conviction because I know it works.
Right.
But oftentimes that conviction gets confused for this is the only way. And I don't hear people talk about the fact that everybody's different. And oftentimes, when it really comes down to it, even if there was only one way to do a certain thing best or well, you're going to have to do it your way because you're the person doing it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, I'll pause right there for reflection.
I think you're onto something. And that's probably why there's so many personal development books out there on how to achieve the life you want or maximize your day or optimize your schedule or achieve all of your goals. It's because there's so many different ways to do it. Before we started recording, we were talking about even our just different approaches. I think our philosophies are similar, but our approaches are pretty different. Like I'm like still a little military minded. And so I'm like, okay, this is the desired end state. This is the mission we're trying to accomplish. What are the steps that lead up to that? How do we backwards plan to ensure that we've laid out all of the exact details and steps to ensure success or to ensure likelihood of success. But that's just me, because that makes sense to me, because that's what I did for a number
The
of years.
picture in my head of your philosophy is a toothbrush. You want to explain that?
I want you to explain it. To tell me why you think of a toothbrush.
What's that? Sorry, you froze.
So did you. So why
Okay,
do you think of a toothbrush when you?
Hey, you want better health? Oh no, let me make it the most ridiculous thing. You wanna win the world's most competitive triathlon? Start with brushing your teeth.
Yeah. That's exactly right. Because oftentimes people, they come to me and they're like, Chris, I'm not disciplined. Help me with my discipline. And I usually push back, and I'm like, I bet you are disciplined. You brush your teeth every day. Well, yeah. I mean, I'm an adult. Well, that's where that starts. It's like you've broken down this task of, oral hygiene and general well-being and health down to into this small step that takes about 2 minutes in the morning and 2 minutes in the evening, and you don't even think about it. It's just part of your routine now, and that's what I try to do when we start looking at other kinds of goals, like whether that is winning, the triathlon, or becoming a bodybuilder, or I don't know, just becoming more financially successful. It's like, okay, that's the big goal that we want to achieve. It's good that you aimed big. Let's backwards. Let's rewind. What is the smallest step I can take today to move me a little bit closer towards that? And maybe that is brushing teeth. Maybe your goal is to, win the Boston Marathon, but you are a couch potato. Well, your step one probably isn't going to go, run a marathon to practice. It's probably,
Right.
let's get off the couch and take a walk around the block and then sit back down. Like you have to start where you are and take that first tiny step to inch you closer. But if you do that enough, if you accumulate enough of those tiny wins and those micro victories, the accumulation of all of that over the long haul, it's like compound interest of effort. And that's where you make your money. That's my opinion.
Yeah, and there is a percentage of the population that's the only way they're gonna find their way. That's their only path, because everything else is like an elephant.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, oh, I can't swallow this in one bite.
Right.
And by the way, no one can swallow the elephant in one bite. And I think the people I've worked with are of a posture that is more of a Tim Ferriss approach, where it's set the huge goal, visualize it, feel it, dig into why you want to do it, and then the next step is everything changes, everything's different.
Right.
And so that's more process of motivation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Both work.
Yeah.
And so then it becomes, okay, what works for me?
Right. And
by the way, Tim Ferriss is probably one of the ultimate examples of the way he says something. There's no other option, even though he's not saying that. He's not saying that, right? It's just that guy puts in so much research. He's convinced, I know this works, so why try something else?
Right. And I'm more of the mindset, as you're progressing along, maybe you realize that the process that you've established isn't working. And for me, it's like, okay, then let's find a new process that will work.
Yeah,
but
that's where
at
you
least,
and I
but at least
converge.
you've at least made a little bit of progress so far. At least you've learned something. At least you understand now that you, at this point in time, can't tolerate that particular step-by-step process, you know?
Yeah. It's easier to turn a moving ship, you know, than it is to turn a ship that's sitting still. In fact, I always use that example because it actually takes other objects, other ships to turn a sitting ship. They're called tugboats.
Right, right.
But once the ship's moving, that analogy really breaks down well because the larger the ship, even if it's moving, the longer it's going to take to turn. The smaller the ship, the easier, which is why when you are first starting out, small decision or big decision, you could still move pretty quickly.
Yeah.
That you can parlay that into anything. If you're a one person crew, you make decisions like that, and that's why Ready, Fire, Aim works so well for small businesses.
Yeah, I agree.
If you've got 15 people on your team, it's different than if you've got 120 people on your team. You're not going to make sweeping, massive changes immediately.
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
Larger. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to kind of dial that in some more, but the failing or finding ways that don't work, that's great knowledge to have. And sometimes people get frustrated. It's like, well, this process didn't work. Clearly I'm broken. Clearly I'm the problem. You know, I mean, no, not really. It's just like that didn't jive with you. Like you didn't, that particular step by step or that particular mindset or that particular process just wasn't your thing. So like, all right, sweet. That's great knowledge to have. Now move on to a different one. It's more like, you know, find all the ways that'll fail so you can dial in on the one that is going to work, as opposed to just like, well, if this is the only way and I didn't make it work, I'm clearly the problem, you know?
That's such a fantastic point. Christopher Douglas Lee with the brilliant star there. Another piece of this puzzle.
I don't know how brilliant that was.
About,
it was,
you're
it was more just. It was more just like it's okay to fail.
Yeah, well, you know, that's it's okay to fail is another piece of the puzzle. So
yeah,
you got plenty of folks who are doing great work in helping people make changes in their lives. When people ask me, you know, what do you do as an executive coach for Fortune 500? You know, when you really break it down, I'm a life coach and I help people make changes that they haven't been able to make before, that they really want to make. And for some people, they just realize they want to make a change. And so they talk to me and they're like, let's roll. They are elite performers. Other people want to get into that 99th percentile. And so it's way different. They've been fighting and struggling for a long time, but it's still the same. Like, here's a change you've decided you wanted to make, and I'm going to help you do it. But the piece that you just spoke about being okay with failure, it's another part of the where I think people can quickly get lost is the dichotomy, you know, or the spectrum of you have to take responsibility. It's you always have to blame yourself.
Yeah.
But you don't have to shame yourself. You know, so if you take full responsibility, yes, I am the problem, but I'm not the problem, which sounds like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth, but it is, there's a nuance there, which is why having, you know, people around you that, do you see a thumbs up when I just did that? Can everybody else see that?
It's weird.
I had a bubble pop up. Yeah. I hate when they do that, by the way. Lots of other softwares do that too. There's when you have other people around you, you know, whether it's a friend, family, just your cohort, mentors, coaches, whatever it is, they can help at least they help me stay on track. So I could call you and just be like, dude, I can't get this thing. Like as an individual, I suck as a person. Like I'm not lifing well. And you'll be like, hey, can we break that down a second? You're raising two incredibly beautiful daughters. They're
right.
fantastic. You've had business success. You have a healthy relationship, with somebody you want to spend the rest of your life with. And you're saying you can't figure out how to connect this payment link to a website. And does that really mean, oh yeah, you're right.
Right.
So, but I also know, like, I'm taking full responsibility for that. That's the piece that can get confusing.
I think I think you're onto something for sure. I think it's incredibly important to acknowledge that wherever you are in life currently is most likely a direct result of all the decisions you've made up until this point. And so owning that responsibility is vital. But there's also like really good news in that, because that means that, and is what I like to say, is like you also get to be the hero of your own story. And so the life that you want is really just on the other side of another accumulation of really good decisions. You just have to be consistent with those decisions and go make it happen. So yeah, it is all your fault, but it's also like, that's a good thing, because that means you don't have to rely on, you don't have to be the victim. You get to choose your destiny, essentially. But
Yeah,
it just takes work, and it requires probably a lot of failure along the way in order to get the life you want.
which could seem it's in direct contradiction to be okay with failure, and that you're not the problem, but it's not. It all has to do with context. It all has to do with sequence of actions and events that you're taking. And these
Sure.
things, that's, the very first thing we talked about, episode 1, is, being around other people. That's why being around other people is so important, to help us let those keyholes fall into place.
Yeah.
So you can just unlock that thing,
Yeah. Exactly. The way you structure and set up your life is almost like aligning the pins in a lock. But you get to decide how that is done. If the one particular pin of friends and inner circle isn't the way it's supposed to be, that lock isn't, I mean, you could brute force it, I guess, but it isn't going to function the way it's supposed to. You're not going to have
Sometimes brute forcing works,
sometimes,
but not for every lock.
Not for every lock, and not if you want to reuse the lock either.
Right.
So yeah, like examining your life in such a way where it's like, all right, how do I set myself up in such a way where the doors open up at will? That requires you to examine pretty thoroughly and be rather brutally honest with yourself of the things that you've structured your life with, whether that's friends and family, the kind of workout regimen or healthy lifestyle that you're trying to live, the way you examine your budget. I had this habit for a while where every day I would transfer $10 or $20 from my checking account into my savings account, but I did that every single day. And some people would be like, well, why don't you just do it once on Monday and be done with it? Well, the intent really wasn't the transfer of the money from one account to the other. The intent was to actually examine my finances on a daily basis. And so I can take 45 seconds every single day and look at what's going on with my money. That was like an intentional act. And it's setting up your life in such a way where you are allowing those pins to fall into place and to move forward and have those doors open up for you. But it takes intentionality and it takes like effort. You just have to go do it,
Yeah. I love that example. Makes me want to jump into Academy 99 base camp stuff, but we'll wait.
Let's do it.
We'll wait for the commercial. What are other significant topics that people get stuck on? Oh, there's only one way, and it couldn't be more wrong. Do any come to mind for you right away?
the first one that came to mind is family. And what I mean by that is like some people will get wrapped around the axle like, well, this is my family. This is just, I'm stuck in this position. I'm stuck in this, situation I have no control over. And yeah, you don't get to choose your family. But
You don't
as
get to
adults,
choose the family you're born into.
you don't get to choose the family you're born into. And
Sorry, I didn't mean to correct you. Dude, that sounds like a teacher
but
or an
like,
a-hole.
but like for real, obviously that's going to, affect some trajectory of your life. But at some point,
so much impact, right?
yeah, but at some point you're an adult and you get to choose where you aim your energy and your time. And some people just don't need or don't deserve your time and energy. And maybe that sounds cold and callous, but I think that's the right answer. It's like you are responsible for your life. And so if at the end of your life, you are just going to blame your family situation for your lack of success, I think that's the wrong answer. It's like, all right, make the hard decision early on and say, all right, I love my family. They helped raise me or whatever. But in order to ensure success for my posterity, I need to not devote as much energy towards that particular situation or whatever, and ensure that I'm set up for success so I can help as many people as I can,
Yeah. And there's so many ways to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, you can just draw the hard line.
Yeah.
Well, you can be a jerk about it if you want to be.
You can totally be a jerk, and that works sometimes. But also you don't have to either. Like sometimes
context is everything.
Context is everything, but sometimes it's just like you just stop giving energy. And so you stop digging into the family drama. You stop digging into like the family gossip. It's like, man, I just don't have time for that. And so I stop giving my energy. And sometimes that sorts itself out and,
right.
They stop talking to you too. But I don't know. I think there's different approaches to that. Sometimes it requires a hard conversation like, hey, you're not good for me. I'm not going to spend any time with you. I know that probably hurts your feelings or maybe it makes you feel a certain way, but I got to look out for myself to ensure that I'm successful so I can help you down the road or other people down the road. And that isn't always received well, but I think that's the right answer if the situation necessitates it.
What's the scenario where that is received well?
If they were feeling the same way about you.
Right. That's it. No, yeah. So there is, I mean, you go to extremes, but I mean, the context is important. It's why you can do something the way you're going to do it.
Right.
We'll just do the extremes. Man, if you're in an abusive situation, there might not even be a goodbye. There's just a gone in the middle of the night.
Right.
It's like,
right.
I just raptured myself out of my family. Right.
Yeah.
And then sometimes it's, this person will never understand, even if I've already explained it to them and they didn't understand by their response.
Yeah.
So now I am going to call once a month instead of every week.
Yeah.
And I'm going to answer the phone once a month instead of every day. And you're completely always just brushing off like, oh yeah, sorry, I've been busy. Oh yeah, sorry, I've been busy. But you give zero energy to that response as well. So you just don't care what they think.
Right.
So, and everywhere in between.
And that's what you just said is the difficult part, not caring about what they think. And
that's so funny. Let's keep going.
So there's this like, I don't know, this little maxim that's kind of floating around, and it's if they don't have the life you want, don't care about the criticism that they have to offer. And that's from anybody, whether friends or coworkers or family members. If they're not living the life that you are chasing after, then their criticism means very little, or their opinions should matter very little to you. And I totally agree with that.
Yeah, that perfect segue into the first thing that came to my mind with, everyone says there's only one way. And that is, and It's because there's really some truth in it, but context is everything. People say, you'll just hear it all the time, especially people use it for content. People use it for content, but I've yet to see a course on it, which is you got to stop caring what everyone else thinks. You got to stop caring what people think about you. It's accurate, but it's also some of the worst advice to just throw out, in my opinion, because that is who we are. If you didn't care what people thought about you thousands of years ago, you were going to die on the plains or in the jungle. Planes like flat planes, not like fly planes, right? You were going to die. And so that's in our amygdala wired tightly.
Sure.
People have to like me. If people don't like me, I'm going to die. Now, we don't think that in our anterior cingulate cortex, but we respond that way in our body, you know?
Accurate.
So it's so important and can feel so difficult. And most of the time, by the time I'm working with somebody, they say, yeah, I know I shouldn't. I think I just care too much what other people think. The worst thing I could say as a coach is stop that.
Right.
Because it's just not helpful. You know, I eat too much. Stop that. Okay. Because you're diving into your relationship with yourself, your central nervous system, your relationship with the world and with everybody else in it. And usually the first thing out of my mouth to them is, that sounds exactly like how you should feel. Like any normal person would feel that way.
Right.
And what are the things that you can do? And let's start diving into those things that will help you detach from that feeling and not be driven by that need to be liked.
I think you're onto
to my mind.
Yeah, I think you're onto something for sure. You're right. We as a species are tribal. Like we desire and need like that tribal community in our life. The distinction I would make is, yes, it's natural to care what other people think about you. Now it's your responsibility to differentiate the kind of people that you care that think about you. And what I mean by that is not everybody's opinion has equal weight.
That's accurate.
And if you can start to differentiate the people whose opinion matter very little versus the people whose opinion matter a great deal, that's where you're going to start to dial in what you need to in regards to like moving towards the life you want. Because yeah, not everybody you've ever met, not everybody that's in your life currently is living the life you want. And so as a result, their opinion shouldn't matter as much. Some people, their opinion is everything. And that's who you go to. And that's who you like bounce ideas off of and say, hey man, I think I'm messing up here. Help me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And those are the levers and the dials to adjust, because for sure, just as an example, and then we'll move on. But there are people already you don't care about their opinion.
Right.
I tend to see them if I don the doors of Walmart. But you just do not care what their opinion of you is. And then there are people you desperately care. And oftentimes it's identifying those people that you've obviously built patterns. Okay. Like I love chapter in one of David Data's most popular works that says, begin acting as if your father's already dead. Which has a context that ranges. I mean, it just really depends on your context, but that thing ranges everywhere. If your dad's a POS, because he's your dad and you've built patterns from the time you were little, if you were with your dad or not with your dad, even if he's a POS, you still have a sense of, oh man, like what would my father think if you're a man or if you're a woman?
Yeah.
Unless you've already turned that quarter and built other patterns that say, I'm going to do everything opposite of that guy. I'm going to be successful just to piss him off. Okay, that's a pattern too.
Yeah.
And so it just depends. You've really got to get down into the depths and the mud of the DNA of who you are and why you are who you are. To find those levers and pull and push and switch over to, okay, these are the people that I actually do care. Their opinion does matter. What they think of me does matter. And that's we're constantly adjusting those knobs.
Yeah, 100%.
I said knobs. All right. Anything else that just jumps out at you? I don't have another one right off the top of my head, but it's still within this realm of, there's so much great advice out there, but to think it's the only way.
Right. The other one that kind of popped into my head was, I was asked this the other day, like, what's the best training split for working out? And my response was the one that you can stay consistent with. Because like if you're bouncing around from workout plan to workout plan, it's like workout plans are designed in a certain way to achieve a certain goal. And so if you try one for a week and then another one for a week and another one for a week, you're probably making a little bit of progress in regards to physical health, but you're not achieving what the intent behind that program was. And so what I mean by is the one you can stay consistent with is find something that you enjoy enough, that pushes you enough, that you can do for the long haul to try to actualize on what the intent behind the program was. If you just want to be a beefcake and you're just chasing after hypertrophy, that workout plan is going to look way different than somebody that's trying to be competitive as a marathon runner, but it requires you to do the one that you can do consistently and do for the long haul. And sometimes people, maybe it takes a little while for you to find the thing that you enjoy enough that you can do for the long haul. But like, people, sometimes they don't see results immediately. And so they're like, all right, this program doesn't work, so I'm going to try this one. And then they don't see results immediately and they're like, this program doesn't work, and I'm going to try another one. Well, it's like, it takes a while. Like, be patient, stick with it.
I think the thing that stands out really from what you said was, you think I'm a beefcake.
Yes.
Yeah. And again, the whole point of this conversation is, and I think it's part of what we want with this podcast, some of the transparency is, don't listen to this podcast, Mom, and think that, I agree with Chris and Brad, that's the only way. It's just not accurate. But you'll see that if you go and you look at any of my content on whatever platform, I speak, especially in short form, pretty confidently with conviction. And so it'd be easy to be like, yeah, Brad's right, everyone else is wrong. It's not accurate. Right. I'm wrong more than I'm right. That's what I found in life. And it's that reticular activating system. The missile is constantly off target and readjusting to get back on target. And it just does that all the way to target, whatever that target is. And I see people over and over again get lost in the quagmire of what's the new thing, to your point of stick with something. What's the new thing? I think that the real subtlety in gold is in knowing when to adjust and knowing when to turn the ship, knowing when to right the ship, and change course, and being okay with it, and being okay with, I adjusted course. Now I'm going to stick with this for a while. This didn't work either. Okay, don't give up. There's like 1,000 solutions for every problem. You've got to find your one solution out of those thousands, which you've said before, like, get through the 100 no's, get through the 100 failures. If you knew 1 out of 100 would work, you just get you'd get through those first 99.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. With that, there is also a point. A lot of times people experience sunk cost theory, where they're like, I've invested so much time and energy into this particular process or this particular program or this whatever. It's clearly not working, but I've already dumped so much time and energy. I'm going to continue to dump time and energy into it because hopefully it'll work. There is a point where like you understand like something's not working right, and rather than paying for it twice, oftentimes monetarily and then also time and energy, it's time to like, all right, I'm going to cut sling load and try something different. So that
Yeah.
there is like, you need to have like a little bit of self-awareness of like, and not so much attachment to certain things, where I understand this is not working anymore. It sucks that I invested time, energy, and money into this particular process up until this point, but it's not working. So I'm going to change my strategy. I'm going to adjust and find something different.
Yeah.
That gets scary for people too, because they hate losing out on an investment. But
Let's drill down there just a little bit.
Sure.
For some people, that it's not a process, it's a relationship.
Yeah.
Like, I've invested so much time and I'm so invested in, and you can get wrapped up in processes for sure. But when you're talking about another living being, there is something different that's going on there. And yeah, it's just like, I'm probably this relationship is never going to work.
Right.
But we'll probably stay on this merry-go-round together.
Right.
And so I'm not saying, you should just blow up every relationship. But it's obvious when a relationship doesn't work, and those can be some of the hardest processes to bring to an end, because you know what you're getting. Your nervous system has grown comfortable with knowing that you're going to get that. You know how to adjust. You know how to be the current version of yourself there. You don't know how to be anything other than what you are until you start getting really uncomfortable living that new identity, that new version of yourself. And that can just be painful. Well, it's $1 billion music industry around the pain of that, right? So, and movies for that matter, and books. And audiobooks and podcasts and coaching.
No, I think you're onto something. I think it's when people view certain things, like whether it's a training program or a certain budgeting platform or personal development books or whatever, they do get, it does become relational, where it's like, I'm dependent on it. I'm invested in this. This is my thing, even if it's not working, because it becomes, one, they don't want to lose out on that investment. So they just hold on for dear life. And then two, it's like you mentioned, it's like the devil, even if it's miserable, you know what to expect. And sometimes that's less scary than the
or
unexpected.
A real person.
Right. Yeah. Or a real person. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. It's one and the same there. What are for you, how do you find your way? Like, how do you take, what we're talking about right now is, don't limit yourself. Don't get too caught up in what an expert says, because you can, I literally can look back in my life and see, oh, that's when I was invested in this person's teachings. That's when I got invested in this person's teachings, and it really affected. And it was great. Sure. I mean, like, I've grown that way, but I've certainly come to a point where it's like, I don't agree with everything anyone says. I don't agree with myself last year. I look at things I said and be like, that might have been right for then, but like, I totally disagree with that guy. He's handsome. but I'm not. What's the takeaway, and how do you leverage the realization that, okay, there are many different ways to accomplish a goal?
I think for me, the process is, if I make the decision to invest in either a personal development book or a podcast or, coaching or whatever, I don't think that whatever it is that I just invested in is going to be some kind of magic bullet that solves all of my problems. But rather,
Let's say magic pill, because algorithms don't like
fair.
that other word. I don't know. I don't know for sure if that's true. I don't know for sure if that's true. I just know I've used that term before.
Whatever it is that I invest in, it's not. I don't assume it's going to solve all my problems, but rather, I understand that it's somebody else's idea or somebody else's perspective, and what can I glean from it? And oftentimes with books, particularly, I don't try to necessarily say this whole book is now, holy doctrine that I'm going to apply to my life, but rather it's like, what is the one thing I could take away? If I had to boil this down to one concept or one theme that I could then start applying to my life, what is it? And if I can pull one thing out of material and apply it to my life, I consider it a worthwhile investment. And something I say often to folks is like, the greatest return on investment will always be with self. So if you're trying to get smarter, if you're trying to get healthier, if you're trying to get your finances in order, the materials and the products you use to do those things are always going to pay off in some capacity. Even if you read a book that you completely disagree with, you have now learned something not only about yourself, but like the direction that you want to head. And so for me, it's the greatest return on investment will always be with self. And as a result, the more you invest in yourself to become the better version and the version you want to be, the more you're actually able to help others down the road. It's the oxygen mask theory that I use all the time. It's like in an airplane, when you're getting ready to take off, the flight attendants are like, hey, if we lose cabin pressure, an oxygen mask will fall down. Put yours on first and then help those around you. And I think that's how we need to approach life as well. Ensure that we are healthy and moving towards the actualized potential that we could achieve, so we can better help the ones around us. Because if we're struggling to breathe, we're not really good to anybody,
Accurate. I mean, that's probably, it's got to be like one of the biggest cliches. But like, I had this conversation with a client last night. He was like, "Oh, it's a bit cliche," and I'm like, "Hey, cliches are cliche usually because they're true." And so for something to be cliche, usually people give that a negative connotation. And I'm like, no, put it on the board.
Yeah.
Put it on the board, look at it every day.
Yeah.
So good stuff.
Good stuff.
Appreciate your thoughts. Any closing thoughts? I don't have a closing thought, so you don't have to.
I think the only thing I would leave people with is, just because it worked for somebody doesn't mean it's going to work for you. But that does not absolve you from the responsibility of trying to figure out what does work for you. You are 100% responsible for the trajectory of your life. So explore and try out things that you think could work to ensure that you're moving towards the life that you want.
Yeah, that's I thought I didn't have a closing thought, and then you open your mouth. Copying other people is the first hack. I hate that word, but it's the first hack most people find. Tony Robbins is famous for saying success leaves clues. Find those clues, follow those breadcrumbs.
Yep.
Yes, it does. But at some point, you're the one implementing, you're the one taking action. And so your sequence might be different than somebody else's sequence. Your implementation is going to look different, maybe far different than somebody else's implementation. And so if it's not working for you, it might not be that that doesn't work for you. It's that doing it exactly, it's like a carbon copy doesn't work for you. And so you've got to find what's the way that I feel good about me, that aligns with my values, that aligns with my future vision of who I am, that aligns with my purpose and why I believe I'm here on the planet. And how do I implement that for me? And see, I said that with so much conviction. Hopefully people walk away and say, yeah, there's no other way but the way Brad just said. All right, brother. We'll catch you later again. I know there's a commercial in here already for Academy 99, but Academy 99 base camp, $9.99, the price of a foo-foo coffee out and about. Monthly membership to bi-weekly coaching with you and I. The majority of our resources, if you show up to a call and you need help with something, we're going to help, which means if we've got a resource, our workbooks, our exercise plans, not like maybe your exercise plans, but like exercises, walking people through coaching stuff. All of that will become available to you. And so head on over to that link. It's in the description. It's usually below on YouTube. So
perfect.
All right, brother. I'll see you before next week. But for all intents and purposes, see you next week.
We'll see you.